So what I thought we could do is have a conversation today about AI, um, what's the state of AI, and in particular, cover topics like the future of work, weaponization of robots, the ethics of robotics overall. Do robots have consciousness? Do robots have rights? And maybe in the end, if we have time, talk about sort of how things are moving from um, narrow intelligence to general intelligence to super intelligence, and what that means for us as humans. What does that mean for humankind? Where we may be, our relationship um, to the universe may be something like an ant in the overall scheme of things. So how do we feel about that? So thank you all for being here. So what I'll do is start off with just a basic foundation so that we all have the same basis for the conversation, which is what is AI? So we see sort of change happening around us at unprecedented levels. We see flying cars, you can see kind of very soon coming, big transformation of transportation, self-driving cars, flying cars. You're seeing early signs of digital twins, a kind of a copy of yourself that can act for you. And other things going on. So let's take kind of the digital twin concept, where this is a machine, a virtual instantiation of yourself that's going to be able to take everything that you're doing digitally, the sensors around you, and create another twin of yourself, a digital or a virtual twin, a twin that can go out and explore the world for you. And this twin will be either living in the cloud, like you saw in the movie Her, or it could be in a kind of a robot or even a human-like robot form, like an ex machina. The key thing about this twin is the positive advantages. So it can go out there, replicate itself 1,000,000 times, go and have 1,000,000 adventures out there. And discover the world. It can date for you, it can look for jobs for you, it can do all kinds of things for you, and then help you make good choices, optimal choices. There are dangers also of the digital twin, where if a government or a malicious actor can get control of it, it can really be bad. And you can see early forms of the twin coming, the phone that you have next to you. Is one form of it. Alexa and Siri are another form of it. So that's really AI in work, and AI leveraging data to be able to have intelligence make decisions. We talked about cars and flying cars. So if you see the three big things that have happened in transportation: electrification, sharing, the sharing economy, and autonomous, being able to, for the car to drive itself. And the advantages are huge. You can see sort of improved utilization of vehicles. Hopefully there'll be less vehicles in the car. Electric cars are going to be great for the environment. Less investment in parking infrastructure. People don't need to own cars anymore, so you don't need to have a garage in your house. And this is going through rapid evolution. So from zero autonomy to be able to have hands-on, hands-off, eyes off, minds off, and then fully driverless. It's all coming pretty soon. You also see flying cars evolving, urban air mobility happening very in the next 10 years. And so these are going to be not autonomous in the early stages, but electric. And so they're what are called eVTOLs. So they're electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. So it'll be a form factor like a minibus, but with propellers, and land and take off on skyscrapers. So typically not in airports. And the technology, not just around battery, but around propellers and reduction of noise, is going to make this a very effective competitor to the car, because we are running out of space in terms of roads and parking and so forth. So it's an alternate mechanism, but a mechanism that will have limits, because how much space can we have covered with electric cars? And so that's kind of where, so you can see AI emerging around the future of medicine, around precision medicine, around home robots. We already see sort of a lot of factories kind of automated. And so this is kind of where AI is impacting our life. So how did this change sort of come together all so fast? So the main area here that has developed is an area called machine learning. So typically what programmers did is they programmed the system to do something. And so machine learning basically sets goals. So like a goal could be, I want to win the chess game. And so the machine is learning through trial and error, learning through training data, how to get to the goal. It's not being programmed how to get to the goal. It's learning by itself. And so there's a lot of different techniques around machine learning. There are pure mathematical techniques like Bayesian techniques, statistical type of techniques. There are evolutionary techniques. So a good example a few years back of how evolutionary algorithms were put into place. They wanted to create these robots that could fly. And so they did it by robots randomly being mutating themselves. They didn't start off flying, but through kind of selection, the ones that were able to show some signs of flying were given preference, and the rest were sort of killed. And so over thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of these iterations, they were able to create robots that were able to fly. Perhaps the most exciting area is the area of deep learning. And so this is a technique where you're emulating kind of how the brain works. And it starts off with a neuron, a very simple CPU, a CPU with very simple compute abilities. But what deep learning does is it takes millions, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions of these neurons, and it's the connections between these neurons that are important. So when it looks at an image, when you give it some training data, some of the connections are becoming stronger. And when you give more and more images, you are strengthening those connections. So this is an area which has proven to be incredibly effective to do certain things, and certain things where it has been able to beat human beings. Image recognition, speech and text kind of recognition, translation. How many of you have seen sort of the foreign language translations in Facebook? Pretty good, huh? And so that's deep learning. It's still learning. and so you see sort of big changes, and the big step we are waiting for is sort of, and that is coming, is around kind of human cognitive. So if you think about the ability to see, the ability to hear, are things that AI is able to do pretty well. From a sort of a general public perception, there were sort of three key points. In 1997, Deep Blue, the IBM chess playing machine, was able to beat the world champion at that time, Garry Kasparov. And after that, it was able to consistently beat any human being in chess. And I think it was 2011 where IBM Watson was able to win Jeopardy. And that took a lot of natural language processing, natural language understanding, and the ability to scour sort of all the knowledge out there and be able to access it in a very short period of time. More recently, in 2016, I think, Google bought a company called DeepMind. So Google DeepMind was able to beat, with this program called AlphaGo, was able to beat the then champion, Lee Sedol, in Go. And this was an amazing kind of accomplishment because Go was considered to incorporate sort of deep intuition, a lot of creativity. So Go is a hard to play Chinese board game. And so now, you know, AlphaGo can consistently beat any human being in Go. So you can see sort of how this progression is taking place. And the first area maybe we can talk about, first before we go there, any thoughts on just kind of the techniques of AI, any questions about that? Let me get you a microphone.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. You may want to just your name and what you hope to get out of today.
Oh, my name's Dylan. Well, let's just get this question out of the way. You were talking about machine learning, and I'm a little bit familiar. And I wonder if anybody is doing, or if it's much of a stretch to have machine learning writing its own goals. Like you can randomly generate goals, or some AI, you know, creating what it does.
So he's jumped to the kind of very end because he's familiar with the area. So I'll just repeat the question. I'll paraphrase the question. So he's asking if a machine can then create sort of set a goal to create a machine. So this is in some sense a machine creating an ability to program other machines and build machines. So we'll talk more about this kind of later, and this is an area called superintelligence. And so this is a step where sort of the machines, you can see that if a machine can create a machine that has intelligence, that this becomes a kind of a exponential process where in a very short period of time you have machines that are going to be better than human beings. And so we'll talk more about that. Go ahead, please.
My name is Rico, thank you. Please explain more about the twin. I'm not following how some sort of program in the cloud or something can go out and have experiences for me and do research for me and then brief me. I'm not following it.
So think about kind of just, I'll take it to kind of what we have today. So you have shopping bots out there. They know your preferences, they know your tastes, they know your past shopping history, and they're able to sort of learn about new tastes of yours that you yourself may not know, because they can put you in a cohort of people that are similar to you. So the shopping bot is able to go out on the web and look for things that you may like at the right price and present them to you. So this is a kind of primitive example of a digital twin. Think about a twin that can not just do shopping, but can mimic a variety of different experiences that you have and want to have. And that can kind of be in the form of an agent that represents you. It could be your companion, for example. So it could be someone that you spend time with a lot, like young kids spend time with Alexa. You know, kids who are now in the late teens, their parents used to worry about, digital time, and they would shut off their phone and so forth. The parents of young kids these days worry a lot about the kids' unnatural behavior with Alexa. So Alexa is an early form of a digital twin, where it's a companion and it's doing things for you, but it's very primitive. And so you can see that as this twin sort of gets more and more capabilities, learns more about you through your digital footprint, learns more about you through the sensors connected all around you and the sensors in the environment, it's going to get smarter and smarter and be very similar to you.
One thing I'm very interested in this space is whether or not it's even possible for robots to, or not robots, but for intelligence with a consciousness to develop. And so one of the things that I'm wondering about is what are the current steps and what are the institutions that exist that are actually taking measures to develop a consciousness in the computational robotics space? Do you know of any specific groups or organizations that are working to develop AI consciousness specifically, i.e. self-awareness and awareness of self?
So this is a great question, and it's a question that a lot of people are discussing these days. So consciousness itself, there's no sort of definition. Everyone can define it themselves. But there's a general sort of understanding that, and he described it, self-awareness, ability to create sort of abstract concepts, sentience, being able to feel, being able to suffer, the sense of self, soul. These are all kind of associated with consciousness. And I think there's still a kind of debate whether animals have consciousness, and clearly animals suffer, but do they have consciousness? Do they have an inner self? Do they have an abstraction? Can they create abstractions? There's debate about that. Then the next is around plants. Do plants have consciousness? And so the big discussion right now is around machines. I'm not aware of a specific kind of organization, but the general discussion is around when machines. So there's a test called the Turing test, and the Turing test goes as follows: if you put a kind of a screen, and there's a human being on one side and a robot and another human being on the other side, and I'm having trouble distinguishing between the robot and the human being, that's a test of artificial general intelligence. It's one step before the super intelligence. So it's arguable at that point that the machine, the robot, has some consciousness, and so some people will disagree. I think you have a comment.
Yeah, didn't something just essentially pass the Turing test, or was able to trick, or they essentially passed it?
Yeah, the Google ordering pizza or something. There was
So the general, the way to think about that is there are narrow tasks, and that's called weak intelligence or artificial narrow intelligence. So playing Go, for example, delivering pizza, being able to make a perfect cup of coffee. These are examples of narrow intelligence. And today you see many examples where a machine can beat a human being in a single area. The sense of artificial general intelligence is across a broad set of areas. Not necessarily all areas, but a broad sense of areas, especially the cognitive area, where a human being and a machine are similar. And then the area that he talked about is super intelligence, where the machine is distinctly superior. You have a question? First, just before we get off the consciousness thing, I wanted to see if you have further thoughts.
Yeah, I'm the Turing test does not actually show whether or not something is conscious. Something can pass the Turing test and not be conscious, as was just shown by Google's restaurant ordering bot. It was able to pass the Turing test in a narrow way, and there are many organizations that are actually designing bots to deliberately pass the Turing test because they want to be able to use them for human service interaction. And so they need to be able to pass the Turing test for people to think that they're a human that they're talking to. Those bots are not conscious. What I'm specifically concerned about is a self-aware AI that would be able to recognize its own sense of self and able to sort of it would not just pass the Turing test, it would pass a test that has not been defined yet, a sort of consciousness test, a test where, well shoot, maybe someone needs to create a consciousness test for robotics. Actually, that's a really good idea. That I'm going to go off on that tangent some other time. But basically, you know what? I'm going to give up the mic because I need to think about that for a moment.
While she has a question, I think.
Well, it wasn't a question, it's more of a comment. It'd be like in psychology, where at about 2 or 3 years old, a child can recognize, they put something on its face, and in the mirror, it can recognize that there's something new on its face, and that proves that it's conscious and self-aware. So maybe something like that for an AI, that it can recognize itself in the mirror and different changes to its, I don't know, just thought.
So this is clearly the realm of superintelligence, and we'll talk more about it. But I think we have a question.
Yeah, my question would consider the time frame we're talking about, because we're always talking about general intelligence, super intelligence, but that's far beyond now. That'll be in 50 years on, or what? And there's also this huge fear factor. I've just been to a panel discussion in Munich. It was about AI and robotics, and they put some startups on the panel that created engineering, like picking bots, cobots and stuff. And what I learned from it, it was rather, let's say, boring, because they're still starting. They're not Google, of course, but they said it was hard, creating those picking bots. They are working in those giant warehouses, picking shoes and stuff, and it took them forever, and they're still working on it. So what's the time frame? Everyone says we'll be having self-driving cars in bigger cities in 5 years. I saw some in the Bay Area, but the rest of the world doesn't have them.
So there was a conference, I think about 4 or 5 years back, of a bunch of sort of scientists and others, and so they asked the question that you're asking: when should we expect artificial general intelligence to come? And the consensus of the group there was the number you gave, which is 47 years. And so you're going to be alive in 47 years, and that's not a long time from now. I think the big sort of difference here is this change is happening quite fast. And you said, hey, where's the self-driving car? It's supposed to be here in 5 years and it's not yet here. I'll tell you about the flying car. Uber is starting in 2020, trials in 2 cities, Dallas and LA. 2024, 5 cities. 2027, full scale. These are flying cars. And in self-driving cars, there are different levels, level 0 to level 5, where level 5 is full autonomy in a general purpose kind of a freeway or something like that. Most commercial cars today have level 2 type capabilities, and if you're in Palo Alto, you'll see cars with level 3, level 4 capabilities. So I expect kind of self-driving cars in limited situations, like in an airport, to drop people off and all of that, to be there in 5-7 years. I want to switch now and move to kind of the future of work. And so she said something which is very interesting, which is, and this is called the Mervak's paradox, which is that machines are very good at things that humans are bad at, and humans are very good at things that machines are very bad at. And so this is a kind of a pathway for the next 50, 100 years for how humans and machines can collaborate. So the example she gave is kind of a warehouse stocking, or kind of, let's say, if you have a bar with bottles of different sizes, being able to open the bottle, or having kind of picking objects of different sizes. It is incredibly difficult for a machine to do this. For humans, a young child can do these kinds of things. On the other hand, machines are very good with things that require a lot of data, a lot of knowledge. Of course, they're very good at repetitive things. So the one way to think about sort of how humans and machines will collaborate is how kind of machines can augment human beings, give them kind of amazing insights by collaborating together, enable them to make better decisions, have kind of unprecedented scale, result in kind of enormous productivity. And you can see kind of how this would happen. Machines would kind of assist, augment, and automate different tasks. So you can kind of divide the tasks into three groups. There's going to be one set of tasks that machines are going to be a lot better than human beings. So machines are going to be able to do those manual tasks, repetitive tasks, a lot of sort of data and knowledge-intensive tasks. There's another set of tasks that humans are uniquely able to do. So anything that requires sort of perception, creativity, complex decision-making. And then there's the third sort of magic middle, a new set of jobs where humans and machines are going to collaborate together. And they're going to be in two sets. In the first set is where the machines help human beings. So think about extending the capabilities of our physical and biological self. Think about an exoskeleton that allows us to compensate for either a lost limb or to, like if you're in a factory or if you're in a military situation, to be able to respond faster, lift heavier objects, those kinds of things. Think about sort of how computers today enhance our brain power, our memory power. So that's a way to think about how sort of humans and machines can collaborate and dramatically sort of increase the productivity that we have. The challenge that a lot of people see is around sort of the jobs that are going to get lost, which machines are going to do for human beings. And people expect, if you take a kind of a standard enterprise today, software robots taking over kind of 50%, 60% of the jobs. We've already seen sort of the loss of blue-collar jobs, of manual labor. A good fraction of those jobs are done by robots today. The next set of jobs to go are going to be restaurant workers. It's going to be retail people who are retail cashiers, jobs like that. And perhaps in the next 40, 50 years, it's going to be doctors, lawyers, accountants. And so what do we do about sort of this job loss? So the first thing I would kind of put out there is we've been here before. We've seen sort of the agricultural revolution, we've seen the industrial revolution, and we are doing jobs today that people couldn't even imagine. None of these revolutions resulted in mass unemployment. We are all kind of within kind of 5-7% range. We're all kind of employed. And so the point of view here that at least I share is that there will be a creation of a whole set of new jobs that we can't imagine. But there is going to be trouble during that transition. You know, what we are seeing kind of in the country today, is going to be nothing compared to sort of the turmoil and the disruption then. But our sort of having time for us to not being forced to work, but doing what we want, will also result in huge amounts of creativity. It could result in a renaissance, a kind of a new chapter in human kind of existence. Humans, our Earth is maybe kind of $13–15 billion, 15 years old, and so our life on Earth, that's not a long time, and so we can see sort of a whole new chapter where we are no longer kind of slaves to work, where we are kind of, we don't have to do sort of robotic things because robots can do robotic things better than humans can. So we can do kind of creative things. And you can see some of that happening today in the Bay Area where some of us live. You can buy a coffee for 25–50 cents, and you can buy a kind of artisanal, handmade coffee for $5–6. And there's a market for the $5–6 coffee from Blue Bottle or someplace like that. And so there'll be a general premium on creativity, on artisanal work, and we will have time to be kind of artists and entertainers and spend our time in Burning Man and be sports figures. So that's one pathway of where this can all kind of lead to. There are sort of existing kind of paradigms around work. Work pays us money to live. Work is kind of the way we integrate with society. Work is, many people don't think they're creative, so they are able to sort of come to work and stay sort of occupied for the whole day. But these will have to kind of change, and so the key kind of challenge is going to be sort of a short-term challenge in my opinion, which is what to do about the people who don't have jobs, the fraction of people, and who haven't found sort of other ways to do work. And so here kind of the concept of universal basic income has been getting a lot of momentum. So the idea is that every sort of citizen is entitled to kind of a subsistence level income. And you see sort of growing kind of interest in Scandinavia, Estonia, in France. Alaska has not called it a universal basic income, but out of the oil that is being kind of plundered from Alaska, they have had a very kind of socialist sort of way of giving it to the people, which is in the form of a universal basic income, which sort of ranges in the few thousands of dollars a year for every kind of Alaska native. The same thing in Macau. Macau is a kind of a small kind of area part of China now, which is mostly gambling. And so there's a return for any citizen in Macau. If you live in Macau, you get a kind of universal basic income. So in addition to sort of future of work, there's all kinds of other issues around both social impact and ethical issues around AI and robotics. And so I'll name a few kind of, the creation of kind of the surveillance state, which is what's going on in China right now and in some form in the US. So the loss of kind of privacy, and along with the loss of privacy, kind of the loss of self. The weaponization of robots. So I'll just kind of touch upon the weaponization of robots, and I think a few people have sort of some comments and questions here. So you see the growing ability of drones and robots to be able to sort of navigate, to be able to recognize kind of a kind of an enemy, and to be able to engage and destroy. And this can all be done autonomously. It can be done autonomously today. And so and so the general term for this is laws. autonomous weapon system, lethal autonomous weapon systems. And so people think that this is the third big sort of advance in weapon systems after gunpowder and nuclear weapons. And so there's a general UN effort to try to kind of ban autonomous weapon systems to force a human being to be in the loop. And there are 3 countries that are fighting it: the US, the UK, and Israel. And guess why? Because these are the countries that supposedly already have these autonomous weapons. And so they want to kind of self-police themselves. So I think, so just let me make one point and then which brings us to kind of the theme of this sort of Burning Man, which is around kind of the, around iRobot, Isaac Asimov's iRobot. 3 principles, kind of a robot may not sort of kill a human being, and it may not sort of also be just kind of passive while a human being is killed. The second is kind of 3 things together, sort of errors, bias, and opaqueness of AI. So we are today, so he gave an example of being able to make sales predictions. And so today you can see sort of sentencing and recidivism, predicting recidivism. There are assistants that are helping the courts to do that. Getting a loan. There are AI sort of capabilities that are saying who is going to be in risk of defaulting. And many of these algorithms have shown to just be plain wrong. Plain wrong because there's a lot of snake oil in AI, a lot of errors and mistakes, or because of bias in data. Many of you probably saw sort of I think it was a Google or some report about black people being identified as criminals a lot kind of more frequently. And that's has a lot to do with not the algorithms itself, but deep learning and machine learning depends a lot on the training data that you give it. And it's the training data. And so it is a big issue. And Europe here is further along in this area. So they are beginning to mandate in certain use cases that it has to be explainable. And explainability hasn't been a priority. It's not sort of the sexy thing. And it's not easy either because the way deep learning works is like the brain. And so it's very sort of how information and decision making is done is hard to explain. But I think it's our duty and our responsibility to drive research around sort of the explainability of AI. I agree with you.
I'll try to project my voice. Thank you.
Okay, this is working. So I'm hearing a lot of the word we, as in, we are facing challenges, we have an obligation to focus research in a certain direction. I say as a data scientist living in the Bay Area, I feel very included in that we, but I find myself questioning to what extent can people who are maybe just regular people who are never, who do not have the specialized training and are not close to the industries that are developing these sorts of artificial intelligences, what role is there for them to play? I think that a lot of the backlash against AI that you see is where regular people who cannot explain the algorithm and don't understand why a decision is made suddenly are interfacing with all of these artificial intelligences in different aspects of their lives that they couldn't build themselves, that they couldn't explain how they are built. And to be honest, most of us are going to fall into that category eventually. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on the participation and what somebody who is not an artificial intelligence researcher could do to help move all of us towards a future of ethical AI.
Well, you have a few choices here. The Europeans did what they know how to do well. They regulated it, and they said in certain areas, by regulation, if you can't explain it, you can't use it. And so, you know, we have more influence than we probably think. Social, philosophical, ethical concerns are pretty significant in this area, and I think not just computer scientists and data scientists like yourself, who should question, by the way, why do we have a ban on chemical weapons today? Why do we have a ban on sort of biological weapons with biological agents? Because the scientists in those areas, banded together and got those kinds of weapons banned. So I think data scientists can do a lot, but I think it's also for general citizens who are sort of shareholders and citizens in society to kind of speak up. Let's just take one question there.
This kind of goes back to the biases, and how do you feel humans are biased in general? And so we can create an algorithm with zero biases, but if we're expecting the deep learning to emulate human thought and decision making, wouldn't it organically evolve into creating its own biases? And then how do you eradicate that?
So there's kind of, I think, two questions here. So first, the creator of the bot or the machine who has biases can, by the very design of the algorithm or by select kind of exposure to training data, bias the machine, which I agree with. And the second part I think you mentioned is, would the machine sort of naturally develop sort of the same biases that human beings do? I'm not so sure about that one, but I do agree with you on the first. Anyone else, by the way, please speak up if you have any counter. But let's take a question.
So you mentioned a lot of chances that AI brings to us, but since it's an ethical debate too, I wanted to go back to the maybe threats. And you said they can enhance us, and there's going to be maybe the second renaissance, and there's a burst of creativity. That's what we can see or experience in the Bay Area. I was wondering, how will that transition go? And those who have money might enhance themselves and then rule over the others. That's how it works right now. Those who have power get to decide upon everything. And the other thing I was thinking about is this universal basic income. It sounds perfect. There's a lot of discussions going on in Europe as well. But when I see the US and the spirit here and the culture, like when I talk to people about the social systems we have in Germany, for example, they look at me and say, oh, what a socialist country. And so this universal basic income thing sounds perfect. Yeah, it is. And I wonder, like, how would this transition go, especially in a country like the States, where everyone is their own, let's say, boss and responsible for their destiny, kind of. And I don't see that going. And actually, what we experience, it's all coming over from here. It starts here. And what I can also see in the Bay Area, it's getting ridiculously expensive, and all those who don't have these nice high-tech jobs kind of have to leave the area or find other ways to survive, which I find sad.
So there are a few kind of comments here. I'll just comment also on the comments. The first is sort of those who own the robots, the Elon Musks and the Zuckerbergs of the world, will own kind of most of the wealth, and it'll create kind of massive income disparities. Even if we could pull off the universal basic income, you can see today, based on the tax reform of last year, which is in the US, the rich are unwilling to share with the poor or the needy. And why is that going to change, when we have kind of robots? And so it's probably the fear of revolution. And that's going to allow, and you need consumers, there are people who want to sell. And if people don't have money to consume, but it's a very serious question, which is how is that all going to evolve? Because the robots are going to probably be in the hands of like 2-digit number of people, and they're going to own all the wealth. And we are rapidly, by the way, trending towards that. And so how is that going to be addressed? I think it's a great question. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll kind of close with superintelligence. So after sort of the artificial general intelligence, that is where humans have created a kind of a machine or a robot that is equivalent to kind of the humans in kind of substantially large set of sort of capabilities. The point that he had made is if the humans can kind of create a kind of a machine that can create intelligence, what happens then? And you can see sort of the motivations exist, because the efficiency gains, the improved sort of circumstances give us the machines, the capabilities are there, electrical kind of chip-based systems are 1 million times kind of faster than biological systems. And so the incentives are there. And so a kind of rapid exponential evolution of that will lead to sort of superintelligence. And so a lot of people don't believe in it. There are a set of people and set of prominent people like Stephen Hawking and others who do believe in it. And where kind of humans will be there when superintelligence happens. So when superintelligence happens, then robots can kind of multiply themselves infinitely in kind of very short period of time and form a sort of a collective intelligence. And that collective intelligence will kind of plunder the resources that are there on Earth and won't be kind of satisfied with the Earth anymore. So it will go and kind of transform and colonize kind of the whole kind of universe and the galaxy. And so you can see sort of an evolution of intelligence that is kind of getting more and more intelligent, kind of going from simple to kind of complex. And so, as Stephen Hawking said, the humans could be like kind of the ants, like how we treat ants, would be sort of our relationship to this kind of super intelligence. And so much like we generally don't kind of go and kill ants sort of maliciously, but if sort of ants get in the way, we'll sort of do what needs to be done. So the area that's dangerous for humans is when superintelligence has a kind of a goal and the humans get in the way. And so the superintelligence will crush the humans, much like we crush the ants. And so that's the sort of big open dilemma of superintelligence. And so, but we will, in the superintelligence, we will be kind of a small part. We are not, we are just going to be like ants in the universe. We are not going to be driving it. But the universe may be in a much more evolved state. So I think I'm running out of time. I have run out of time. So I thank you all for your patience, and I'll be around. Thank you.